All right, the Krug Show back streaming on a Monday, back from vacation, a week hanging out on the East Coast. We're back and we're rolling. And you know what? Mondays at 11 o'clock, or 11:09 on the West Coast, to be exact, means Sam Batesh time. And we got a special guest. I'm fired up. Let's go. Off and running, the Krug Show brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket. Get some brisket chili. You will not be disappointed. Tell them the Krug sent you. And, of course, we're brought to you by Mancini's Sleep World. Huge shout-out to our sponsor, Mancini's Sleep World. Mancini's is fantastic, and they are backed by 3 principles: their best price guarantee, their 365-night comfort guarantee, and free next-day delivery. So if you're needing a bed, now is the time, and make sure you use the code KRUG10 at the checkout or online at sleepworld.com at any of Mancini's locations. And thanks to all of our sponsors for sponsoring the Krug Show. The links are in the description below. I am fired up because Sammy's in the house. We've been doing this for a while now, these Mondays at 11 on the West Coast. And Sammy, you know, obviously you guys are already loving Sammy, but Sam and I go way, way back, and he has done a world of different things in sports broadcasting, in sports media. And today we have a special guest, Lige Douzable, and you've seen him on CBS Sports, SNY, ESPN, all over the NFL, the Jets scene, former defensive lineman with the Jets and Bills, and he's with us on the Krug Show to chop it up. Lige, thanks for jumping on.
Man, of course. Thanks for having me. You know, Sam is my guy. We go back a ways. So, you know, he hit me up. He's like, man, why don't you come on the show with us for a little bit? And I was like, man, we're talking football. It's the summertime. This is always like that lull in sports when the NBA championship ends. And right now, all you kind of have is golf and baseball, and everybody's just fiending for football context. So why not talk about some football this summer?
And by the way, Larry, we got to give Lige a little extra love. Look at that Emmy award sitting behind him too. I mean, let's not forget. I mean, that doesn't just happen. They don't just send those out, Larry. All right, that's not like a coupon booklet that shows up at the house. All right, Lige earned that one. I mean, even off the field, look at him still bringing it. Lige legend, as I call him. But dudes, it's great to have you here. We're thrilled. And Larry, thanks for putting it all together, man.
Well, we're fired up, and you know, we thought Lige would be perfect because of the Jets connections and so many Niners Jets connections, from Robert Saleh to Brant Boyer and others. And I don't know that it's over because, you know, I've been looking at the Jets depth chart, and I know Robert Saleh traded up in the 3rd round for Malachi Corley, and I don't know that Corley's got a route to a roster spot with the Jets, and if he gets cut or if it looks like he could be getting cut and the Niners have the right series of injuries offensively, I could see Corley being, a 49er if the draft pick compensation could be worked out. Just an idea. What's Corley? What do you think of the Jets wide receivers and Corley's fit in there? Why don't we start there?
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about Malachi Corley, and you hit it right on the head when you talk about Saleh and his experience with San Fran coming over to the Jets, is they had a guy like Deebo Samuel that had the similar skill set to Malachi Corley, and that's what Malachi Corley did at Western Kentucky. He wasn't a precise route runner, but he was a guy, if you just got him the ball in space, he was going to make plays. He's extremely hard to bring down, and for some odd reason just could not get on the field last year as a rookie. And even when he did, when he made a positive play, he fumbled the ball right before going over the goal line versus the Houston Texans. So he had a little bit of growing up to do with the New York Jets. And the thing about football, Sam and Larry, is like when a coach gets fired and a new regime comes in, a lot of times they kind of want to build their own culture and bring in players that fit their mold or culture, right? So Malachi Corley, rookie player last year, got drafted by the previous staff. Now this new staff comes in, and they don't have any favoritism towards you, right? There's no loyalty towards you. So he's going to be in a camp battle. And it's interesting to say that because it's not like the receiver room for the Jets is a gaudy receiver room where you know going into the season, we know who our top 5 guys are. Honestly, the Jets may only know who 2 or 3 of their receivers are going to be. Right now, I would say Arian Smith and Garrett Wilson are probably the only 2 receivers that are guaranteed to be on the roster for the Jets next year. So for Malachi Corley to be even in the conversation of potentially getting cut, he should have some worries about him, and he should really grind this offseason to get ready to have a hellacious camp because he could be on the move, to your point, Larry.
I'm looking at the depth chart. I just picked up our lads here and shared the screen. It's Garrett Wilson. If let's count. First of all, we all know NFL teams, they go with 5 or 6 receivers.
Correct.
Maybe they'll go with 7, but it's usually 5 or 6. So you got Garrett Wilson, that's 1. Josh Reynolds, they just signed as a free agent, that's 2. Lazard is a starter right now, at least. That would be, I would think, 3. They really like Tyler Johnson, the former Minnesota Golden Gopher who went to Tampa. He's not a burner, but he's got great ball skills. The talk at a mini camp was Arian Smith this, Arian Smith that. Arian Smith was not good at Georgia, but he is incredibly fast. We're talking about a guy who might be one of the fastest guys in the NFL. We're talking about 4.2 something speed. Then you look beyond Corley. You've got Xavier Gibson, who's a pretty accomplished return man. He's
in a battle too, though.
Yeah, absolutely he is. But if he gets cut, other teams will go after him for sure. And then I like Jamal Pritchett from South Alabama. He's a small receiver, but he's really dynamic. I don't know much about the other guys they got, but I'm just looking at that right there. We just counted 7 or 8 guys, and Malachi is in that mix, as you said. But if he doesn't, I could see Saleh, who traded for him last year. I could see Joe Douglas doing it in Philly, but I don't think Philly has the need as much. But the Niners may have a need at wide receiver. Corley could be a Debo type. He is a second-year receiver. I don't know. I'm maybe I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But that would be a guy I think would fit for the 49ers. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Larry, also, when you look at that list, yes, Josh Reynolds signed there, but it was a 1-year deal. Alan Lazard, a lot of people feel like he's already going to be on his way to Pittsburgh because that's where his best friend, Aaron Rodgers, is. And there were some talks that they were going to cut him at the end of the season. They didn't. They restructured his deal, brought him on. He's not making that much money this year. I could see him end up getting traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers because that's somebody Aaron Rodgers is very familiar with. He's had his struggles with drops. You talked about Arian Smith. He's had his struggles with drops too at Georgia. I believe dropped over 10 passes last year at the University of Georgia. But like you said, he's a burner. He can blow the top off the defense. And according to everything that's happened at OTAs and minicamp, he actually has been one of the bright spots in that receiving room, beside obviously Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has been unstoppable, and that's what he's been most of his career as well. So, even some of those veterans that you would assume are just locks, I don't think Josh Reynolds is a lock, even though he does have the familiarity with Aaron Glenn from his days at Detroit. Tyler Johnson, I'm not saying he's going to be a lock. It just depends how the roster shakes out. There could be they only take 5 receivers and maybe they go more heavy 2 tight end sets this year. Maybe they keep 4 tight ends, right? It just depends on what Tanner Angstring, the new offensive coordinator, and Aaron Glenn want to do.
Sammy says your friends call you Dues. So is it okay if we call you Dues?
They call me Dues.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Dues, what do you think of the 49ers D-line? You're a former D-lineman. They drafted Mikael Williams in the first round out of Georgia. They took Alfred Collins in the second round out of Texas. They took C.J. West in the fourth round out of Indiana. They got Bryce Huff.
Whew, that was big.
I'll say this, though. Watching him practice, he's a small guy. But then his get off is spectacular.
He's so explosive.
So explosive. How do you see the remade Niner defensive front around Nick Bosa?
So, Larry, I had some concerns going into this offseason. Obviously, they kind of gutted that defensive line. Malik Collins is out the door. Leonard Floyd was out the door. They kind of revamped what they wanted to do on defensive line. You could tell there's a heavy emphasis on stopping the run because they really struggled at doing that the last couple of years since D'Amico and Robert Saleh have been gone. The only thing that I question is some of the body types they drafted don't normally fit the scheme that Robert Saleh and Chris Kaserik, who is the defensive line coach, they don't typically fit what they want to do. Case in point, Mikael Williams is more of a 3-4 defensive end. And for people that don't know what that means, those are bigger body defensive ends. They kind of line up head up on the tackle instead of on the edge of the tackle. And that's what he did exactly. And that's what he did at Georgia a lot, right? And then there was times they kicked him inside over the guard, and he rushed the passer as a 3 technique, which, again, a 3 technique is the outside shoulder of the guard for people that don't know what that means. And then you get Alfred Collins, to me was one of the best run-stuffing defensive tackles in this draft, but he's not like a get up the field, create havoc type of guy. And that's what that defense has been synonymous with, right? And then CJ West as well. I know they want to kind of compare him to DJ Jones, and the body types are similar, but DJ was a better athlete. I played with DJ his rookie year when I was in San Fran with Saleh. And DJ was a heck of an athlete, and that's why he continues to get paid, and that's why he just got paid again for the Denver Broncos, because even though he's a bigger body, he's got some wiggle, man. That big dude's got some wiggle, and he can rush the passer for a guy that's 310, 320 pounds. So that's my biggest concern when I look at this defensive line. Like, they changed up the body type. Does that change up schematically what they want to do? Because this defense has always been run by the D-line, creating havoc up front. But the body types that you have now, it doesn't associate with you still running that scheme. Now, Bryce Huff, I thought, was a major signing because the last time he was with Saleh, he had double-digit sacks, and that's why he got paid by the Philadelphia Eagles. And when he went over to Philly, it was a schematic change for him, going from a 4-3 to a 3-4 outside linebacker, which wasn't something he was accustomed to doing, right? He's used to pinning his ears back and going forward, where, with Vic Fangio's system as the outside linebacker, you got to drop sometimes. And that's not what Bryce Huff does. So I think we'll get more of the production that we saw when he was with the New York Jets, now that he's back with Saleh running that system. But my concerns are with a lot of the rookies that they took, that they're going to really be banking on to make plays early in the season. Is their body type, does it position them to have success in that scheme with Chris Kasarik and Robert Saleh?
Well, I want to jump in on one part of this, and obviously, Deuce and Larry, I'm a Philly guy, and so the Huff thing is really fascinating to me. And Deuce, and by the way, thanks everybody for liking and subscribing here. We're at Krug Show, we're at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam on both of these pages. And Deuce, thanks for being a huge part of this today. But my question is this, Deuce, and you've done it. You obviously, players change teams in this league. Most of them do. It's a natural. Well, for Huff to obviously have the impact that he did with the Jets, to get that money and show up in Philly. And it's not like that's a forgettable season in Philadelphia, right? I mean, this is a Super Bowl run by the Eagles that he is essentially not a part of at all. I mean, he's watching the Super Bowl like all of us on Super Bowl Sunday, instead of being a part of what is now considered a legendary defensive performance, not only through the entire season with Fangio, but specifically against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. And you would think when the season starts, if you say, okay, Huff signs, the Eagles have the number one defense, and they beat Mahomes in the Super Bowl, you're thinking, wow, what an impact Huff had. And instead, he's making room for other guys to get in there. What exactly, what happens when you change? You're changing cities, you're changing teams. We talked about changing all of the scheme that he is in, but what is that like, and what's it going to be like for him now to be in a third setting with San Francisco?
So let me take you guys into the locker room, schematic-wise, about Vic Fangio. And one thing I know about Vic, because I've talked to players that have been in the system, whether it's the Denver Broncos, the Miami Dolphins, the Philadelphia Eagles, is if he feels like you don't fit his system, there's no room for you. There's no room for you. And again, this is not a shot at Vic Fangio. And maybe going through OTAs and mini camp and camp, he thought Bryce Huff couldn't run his scheme the way, or proficient enough to be out there on the field over a guy like Nolan Smith or Jalix Hunt. And I think that's what, clearly, And I think that's exactly what happened, right? Howie Roseman was looking at this like, we can bolster our pass rush. We're going to get rid of Hassan Reddick, who's older, and we're going to get younger with Bryce Huff. But Vic Fangio has a certain way he runs things. And if you believe in the system and you run it to the T that's running it, you get what happens in Philadelphia. You get a Super Bowl winning team, right? But I know for a fact, if he feels like you can't be part of the solution in this defense, you're not going to play. And that's just how he's always been. So going back to the second part of your question, Sam, now I think Bryce will be more comfortable because he's back in a familiar setting with a coach that essentially believed in him. Because what people may not know about Bryce, if he was an undrafted free agent like me, he literally had to work his way up and like earned everything with the Jets. And I love Robert Saleh, even to his detriment. At times, I don't believe he knew what Bryce Huff could really be, right? There was times where I feel like they undervalued him, right? And I'm not even saying letting him walk in free agency, because he played so well that he paid himself out of New York. Like, New York was not going to be able to pay him what he was going to get, which was, I think, $15 a year or even more than that. So But there was times where I felt like he should have been the starter, and they felt like he was just a pass rush specialist. But we've seen guys like Hassan Reddick or smaller defensive ends with their get off and explosive ability be able to play the run because they put the tackle in such a bind because of their get off that they have them off kilter and they can set a vertical edge. And I've seen Bryce Huff do that. So again, I think schematic wise, and I tell people this all the time, coaching and where you go matters. It really matters. Like, people are so quick to say somebody's a bust or somebody doesn't fit our scheme. I had a coach once tell me, don't tell me what a guy can't do. What can he do? And let's highlight his attributes and what he can do. Like, I think that's a lost art in coaching a lot of times. And I think for Bryce Huff, going back to a Robert Saleh and a Chris Kasarik, who's going to get the best out of him, an attacking style defense, they're really going to benefit from his specific skill set.
You know, Dudes, I asked Kasarik a few weeks ago. We had a chance to do some face-to-face with the coaches, and I really appreciate that. We get it a couple times a year, and I went right over to him and I said, hey, what happened last year with Huff? How do you explain the lack of production? And obviously, I saw the lack of snaps, but outside of the lack of snaps, explain the lack of production. You're watching the film. You wanted him. What are you seeing? And, he brought up a pretty good point, and the point was that, he's just basically saying different schemes. And basically, he said, hey, I thought this was the way that was interesting, though, the way he verbalized this. He was talking about the step sequencing as a stand-up guy in a 2-point stance, as a 3-4 outside backer, as opposed to hand in the dirt. And in Huff's case, he goes 4-point stance.
Yep. He puts both hands down.
He's a four. I mean, it even looks funny because you got Nick Bosa in a kind of an elongated, like, track 3-point stance.
Correct.
You got Huff in a real, like, tight, right over the ball 4-point stance. But his get off is choreographed. It is incredibly fast. But that was Chris's argument, that the step sequencing is quite a bit different in a 4-3 wide 9 get off the ball, get up the field scheme, as opposed to Fangio's 3-4. So occasionally you're going to drop. And he says that that's enough to throw off your rhythm and your advantage, especially for, and you want to say it, but I'm sure he meant it, for an undersized rusher who needs a great get off to win.
100%. I'm so glad you brought that up, Larry, because now we're talking about the X's and O's and the details of pass rushing. Just imagine, for your whole life, you've been in a certain stance and you've had so much production doing it. And then all of a sudden you go to a new team and they're like, well, we know that worked for you, but we don't want you to use that stance anymore. We want you to stand up in a 2-point stance, but we want you to have that same get off. No, it just doesn't happen. It's going to take a while for you to get used to being in that stance. And to KK's point, I call him KK because Chris Kasarik, that's his nickname, KK. He makes a really good point. Just like the step sequences and the details and how you're setting up your rushes are totally different in a 2-point stance than they are in 3-point stance. Like, in a 3-point stance, you may be able to get an extra step in. In a 2-point stance, you have to shorten up your stance or elongate them to set up counter moves. I actually saw Myles Garrett talking about this the other day, because he'll mix it up and he'll line up in a 3-point stance and a 2-point stance, and he changes up his cadence. And when I say cadence, like the way he steps and maneuvers to set up the offensive line. So again, if you have never done something before and they ask you to do it, it's going to take a while for you to feel comfortable in that stance and to have that production that you're accustomed to doing. I think, again, that was part of the issue with Bryce going to Philly.
Larry, I want to jump in on that because Dudes just talked about changing stances and doing things differently and how meetings can change an entire mentality for a player. And this is just so fascinating to me. And it happens to be on the thumbnail that you've got over at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam right now. And you put it up there as well, Larry. But Travis Hunter is so fascinating to me. And Dudes, from someone that's been in meetings, that understands what it's like to be, you're part of a position meeting, you're part of a defensive meeting, You're part of a team meeting. And now we're talking about a player. I mean, Shohei Ohtani, yesterday for the Dodgers, he pitches an inning, scoreless, no hits, 2 strikeouts on the mound. He then hits a triple and a home run. He scores 3 runs and he drives in 5 RBIs. I mean, you can't have more of an impact on a game than what Shohei did. And he only pitched 1 inning, and he's obviously going to pitch more than that over the course of this season. That's what he does. What makes him the greatest player in baseball, I'll say, that we've ever seen. But in football, now we get it. I mean, in baseball, it is amazing what Shohei's doing, but dudes, every player plays a position, unless you're DH, and then hits, right? I mean, that's sort of the part of it. But in football, the idea of playing offense and playing defense, now there's one part of just through the game, the energy it takes to play both of those and never really get a break. But I'm talking about the week of prep, dudes. I'm talking about a play where you've got both playbooks, not just two different positions on defense, a position on offense, a position on defense. Travis Hunter's trying to do something. Charles Woodson's a Hall of Famer, right? But he chose a lane, dudes. He chose what he wanted to excel at. Travis Hunter with the Jags, to have the impact that we think he's going to as the number 2 pick, the way that he was, he's going to have to do this on both sides, right? Is this possible? I mean, I just don't understand how a player can comprehend everything he's going to have to in order to excel in these two ways.
I mean, Travis Hunter is an alien just by what he did in college. Like, to take that amount of snaps on offense and defense weekend. I mean, there was games where he took over like 130 snaps, which is unheard of, right? You talked about what it takes physically to do that, but I'm with you, Sam. The mental fortitude and to know all the defensive checks, to know all the offensive checks, to be able to be out there and grasp everything mentally is the biggest thing. And his answer to people saying he can't do this, he was like, well, before I had school and football, now I just have football to think about. So, like, I'll be able to do it at such a higher level because this is the only thing I'm focused on. I don't have to worry about going to school. Now, the thing is, the NFL is way more physical than college, right? These guys you're playing are the best of the best week in and week out. And because you're Travis Hunter, you essentially have a star on your back, right? Guys are going to want to embarrass you on offense. And when you're on offense and they're on defense, they're going to want to embarrass you. So in regards, when you're a receiver, sometimes there's like plays you maybe could take off. Say you're on the backside, you can run the corner off. Guys might try to send him a message and put hands on him, even on run plays, just to wear him down because they're like, who does kid think he is coming in, being able to play both sides of the football? And everybody keeps talking about the Shohei Ohtani comparison. I think you can't compare the two because as a pitcher, it's kind of like comparable to a quarterback. Shohei's like, his handprint on the game is literally like every play starts up with him pitching the ball. So he has an impact on each play, right, when he's a pitcher. Where Travis is dictated on Trevor Lawrence getting him the ball, or when he's a defensive back, if the ball's thrown his way as far as him making an impact on the play. Now, again, what he's doing is out of this world. And honestly, I think for longevity, because he's not the biggest dude. He's actually kind of frail. And I don't think people have talked about that enough. Is he going to be able to withstand the physical rigors? And he did last year, but let's not forget, he has a history going back to Jackson State, going back to his first year at Colorado, where he missed multiple games because of injury, right? And a lot of that could be because of his frail size. Now, I'm not saying that's why he got hurt, but now you're talking about a 17-game season playing both sides of the ball, not only physically, but mentally as well. I think for them justifying trading up to get him number 2, he has to play at least, I would say, 20 snaps on one side of the ball and play all the other snaps on the other side of the ball. That's the only way it makes sense.
He's so interesting. I mean, he's such, and if the more you read about this guy, he's such a high achiever. I mean, he's not just a two-way. He's not just a two-way player. He's a great two-way player. He's not just a student. He's an elite student. This guy's just an amazing achiever. If anybody could do this, it would be him.
It's going to be him.
I would say this though, it's not doable. This isn't Jim Thorpe days of football. It's not doable. When I say it's not doable, what I mean is this. It's not doable to be a full-time defensive player and a full-time offensive player.
Oh, no. Without a doubt.
And to me, if you're gonna be an NFL team, you're gonna pay this guy a mint. You're gonna want to get your money's worth. I would say be smart. You don't take your Lamborghini or your Ferrari Testarossa off-roading. You know what I mean? And so what I would do is I would make him a full-time defender and have packages for him offensively. He's not a full-time offensive player. He's not running across the middle of the field. I'm not subjecting him to Malik Mustafa. I'm not. Malik Mustafa is going to end that guy. And there are Malik Mustafas all over this league. So, you know what? I'm not doing that. I'm keeping him as my big play guy. I want him in packages. I want to use him on the sidelines. I might use him as a return guy. I want him to impact the game the way Dion did, and have the ability. But I'm going to treat him like a sports car. I'm not going to – I don't want it – because it's just already enough to be a two-way player. There's going to be enough – injuries in there and potential banging bodies. I want to keep him out of the middle of the field. I want to preserve him because he might be the best game breaker we've seen in a long, long time. But some people say, well, he's a full-time receiver who's gonna moonlight on D. I don't think that works. I think he's a full-time corner with a package of offensive plays. If you had to be 1 and 1A, which would be the 1? Which would be the 1A?
Well, we're talking business here. He probably would lean towards receivers because they're making $40+ million right
for
now.
Money. For money
wise. But I'm with you. I just think, and I think the GM James Gladstone even spoke to this. He was saying why they kind of indoctrinated him on the offensive side first is because there's so many more checks and more to think about that. He's so naturally gifted defensively. He felt like he would pick that up extremely fast. So I'm like you, Larry. I think to me, he'd be a full-time starter at corner, and maybe I'd even play him at the star position. That way we could just use his skill set, the free flow in the back end, and he could just play in zone coverage and just attack the football because he has some of the best ball skills we've seen in a long time. And then at receiver, I would get him like 15 to 20 plays a game, some end arounds, some bubble screens, give him a certain amount of packages that he goes in for, but he wouldn't be playing more than 20 plays max on offense throughout the regular season each game.
Well, dudes, I want to bring something else up because you and I talk a lot. We keep in touch, but something that really caught your eye, and Larry, you can put this up. There's a player. It's not talked about a lot. But Kendall Lamb has moved over from the Dolphins to the Eagles, and we all know that right now the Eagles, just like everything Howie Roseman touches right now, everyone says turns to gold. So right now, the culture in Philadelphia, which, by the way, no one loves the culture of Philadelphia sports fans, so it's hilarious now that Philadelphia is setting the bar for what culture should be in the NFL.
Exactly.
But that's what happens when you win a Super Bowl, right? All of a sudden, all of your wrongs are righted. And so nothing right now can be wrong in Philadelphia. And, of course, people that root for that team are loving it. But this is so fascinating to hear what Kendall Lamb is saying about the Dolphins. And this quote, I'll read it. It's on the screen for us. But what Kendall Lamb is saying, and now he's only spent, we're talking a couple months now that he's with the Eagles coming from Miami. But what he's saying immediately, this came through to him. I understand why the Eagles reached 2 Super Bowls in 3 years. Players are never late, never toxic, and after every practice, the room spends 15 minutes sharing personal struggles to stay mentally sharp, something I never got with the Dolphins. Now, dudes, before just teeing you up on this, is that unique to Philadelphia? I want to ask you that. You've spent enough time in locker rooms in your days, and you spend enough time around them now. Is that unique to the Eagles? And is it something we're calling out the Dolphins for? Or is this something that happens across the league?
There's so much to decipher in this. First of all, that's not unique just to the Philadelphia Eagles. Teams that have a lot of success, i.e. the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, going back to the Patriots and their dynasty with Tom Brady, like this is some of the stuff that they do. Like guys are held accountable. But to me, this is lame as hell. And excuse my French, Larry and Sam. You were on the Miami Dolphins, I'm not mistaken, for the last 2 to 3 years, right? And there's certain things that we keep just in the locker room. And if you had grievances, you should have brought it up in the locker room. Now, again, if that didn't work, I have no problem with you going to the media and saying guys need to do better, guys need to be held accountable, guys are late, they need to show up on time. If you handled it or tried to handle it in the locker room at first. Now that you're on another team, now you want to cry wolf and say, well, I understand why the Eagles reached the Super Bowl 2 out of the last 3 years. Guys are never late. It's never toxic. And after every practice, the room spends 15 minutes sharing personal struggles to stay mentally sharp. You're telling me after every single practice, everybody has a kumbaya session? And I'm all about mental health and mental fortitude. But you're telling me after every single OTA, there's a sit-down session and guys have 15 minutes where they talk about their mental sharpness. I just don't believe it. All right. Again, I get you wanting to up your team because you're now with the Philadelphia Eagles, but to me, this is lame. Like, if this was such an
Exactly.
issue when you were in Miami, handle it there. Handle it, and that's the problem, right? Everybody wants to run to the media, Twitter fingers, run to Twitter, run to Instagram. No, sit down like men and handle your situations. If there's a star player on your team and you feel like you've built up enough cachet to say something to him, say something to him. Perfect example, I'm with the Jets, right? And on our D-line, we have nothing but Pro Bowler players or first-round picks. My last year in 15 there, we had Damon Snacks Harrison, who was an All-Pro. We had Muhammad Wilkerson, who was a Pro Bowler. We had Sheldon Richardson, first-round pick Pro Bowler. Leonard Williams, first-round pick Pro Bowler. We had –
That was a room, man.
Yeah, literally, we had dudes. But them dudes knew the work I put in, and even though I wasn't a Pro Bowler, if I felt like one of them were lacking, I knew I was comfortable enough to say something to them, and then they would hear me out because they knew that we had put the work in together. So my thing is, Kendall Lamb, if you felt this way while you were there in Miami, say something to the player. And if it doesn't work then, I have no problems with you going out to the media and saying, dudes here ain't taking it serious. But for you to do this after you've left, this was lame as hell.
That's amazing.
You know,
this is great. Larry, go for it.
You know, a couple thoughts on this too. I mean, first of all, you know, there's guys that would read this that would be like, I ain't signing in Philly. I ain't sitting around playing Kumbaya for 15 minutes after every damn practice. You think Chris Jones wants to sit there and talk for 15 minutes with a bunch of scrabinis about, you know, the finer points of crap every day? No, he wants to go out there, kick ass, and get off the field and get off his feet. But, I mean, you know, I will say this, though. I mean, there are different calibers of organizations and different standards. There's no question. I mean, you've heard it from different players in different eras. You know, hey, I was playing here. I've talked to Steve Young about the differences of, you know, in Tampa compared to the Niners in the 80s with Walsh. And, you know, those are the extremes, of course. But, Lige, you played with the Niners in 2017, the year one of Shanahan and Lynch.
Yeah.
And you also played – you know, I'm talking to a guy that's played in the league. I mean, the Vikings, the Giants, the Rams, the Lions, the Jags, the Titans, the Jets, the Bills, and the Niners. So it's not like you wouldn't have perspective. And by the time you played for the Niners, you had pretty good perspective on you know, what a good or bad situation looked like. What was 2017 like for you as far as your just, you know, your experience with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, because this was year one.
Oh,
they were trying to
then.
establish, and they were trying to establish a culture, and you were part of that first team. So take us back to 2017.
Yeah, shout out to John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And I will say this: John Lynch and a few of the other coaches have told me that the success they had in 19, I did have a small part in trying to, you know, build that culture that was there, because I was the Wiley vet. It was me and Elvis Dumerville, and we had a whole bunch of young guys like DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, and then my guy Solomon Thomas was there, DJ Jones, who I talked about earlier. All these guys were very young, literally like second year or rookies, right, when we got there. So it was all about establishing the culture, because San Fran had really struggled a few years before that. They had kind of lost their winning ways, hadn't been to the playoffs in like 4 or 5 years before that, maybe like 3 or 4 years before that. Ever since Coach Harbaugh left and went to Michigan, they had really struggled. So what I remember most was thinking that they were going to turn it around, right? Again, it seemed bleak when we were there. And to your point, right, you kind of know once you've been in locker rooms for a while how the season's going to go pretty early in training camp. Like, you know, if you got a legit team that has a chance, or it's going to be a long year. And no player will probably admit that, but they know. Like, they, in the back of their heads, they know, like, it's going to be a struggle. Like, we gonna have to fight tooth and nail to put some wins together. Or like, oh, we got a chance to make a run in the playoffs, or we got a chance to go get a Lombardi. Like, you know, pretty early on your teams, like, if you got a legit shot based on the dudes that are in the locker room, also like the resume guys have built up in the locker room, and then also just the culture alone, right? And in your first year as a head coach and GM, you're trying to build that culture. So I knew it was probably going to be a long year for us. Things kind of shifted when we made that trade for Jimmy Garoppolo, and the plan originally was for him not even to play. They were going to use him as trade bait the next year, but C.J. Beathard ends up getting hurt, and he's forced into action, and then I think we win 5 in a row, and then Jimmy G becomes one of the highest paid quarterbacks NFL history at the time. He had $100+ million deal off of literally like 5 or 6 starts that season. So what I remember was, again, Kyle, it being his first year, John's being his first year, and them just trying to change the culture. And then like having guys like me and Elvis Dumerville around to try to help. And Joe Staley was another great dude as well that was in that locker room to try to help them turn that culture around. And like I said, 2 years later, they were in the Super Bowl.
Amazing. Dudes, but before we let you go, I want to hit something, and it's back in your backyard here with the Jets. But this is a really interesting one. Mark Schlereth, who's a great guy, tremendous in the media, great former player, Super Bowl champ, played with Elway, of course. Schlereth's got a podcast, and he's pretty tight with Aaron Rodgers. There's sort of an inner circle of people that Rodgers likes to talk to. Schlereth apparently is one of them, which is great. But what Rodgers said to Schlereth, dudes, recently was that he couldn't believe he went on a 25-minute diatribe apparently to Schlereth about how brutal the Jets' running game was while Rodgers was there. Now, remember, this is only 2 seasons, and one of them, obviously, Rodgers was watching and not really on the field for. So this is probably more about 2024 than it is 2023. But the running game, which was looking like it was so much on the right path with Breece Hall, and what happened for the Jets to end up 31st in the running game for last season, and Rodgers was going on and on about this. So there's 2 pieces to this, dudes. There's obviously Rodgers, and every time Rodgers says something, there's a grain of salt, and everyone says, okay, is he kind of crying over spilt milk? But the other part of this is they were 31st in running the ball. So something wasn't working there. What, from your perspective, was happening with that Jets team with a healthy Rodgers, obviously adding Devontae Adams, but specific to the run game, as he talked about, what do you think of what went on there?
There was so much that was messed up schematically with that team. And one thing Rodgers didn't mention, because it's his close friend, Nathaniel Hackett was the offensive coordinator before that. And when Hackett was, much. Exactly. Yeah. And in 23 or 24, the running game wasn't good when he was in charge of the play calling. I literally, Saleh's my guy. There would be times I would text him, guys, and ask him, like, what is being taught on the offensive line when it comes to certain angles they're taking in blocking schemes? Because it just makes no sense what I'm watching on tape. Like, schematically wise, they were just all over the place. It just didn't make sense what they were doing to try to get the best out of the run game. And I think the offensive line struggled because of it. I know Breece Hall struggled because of it. And that'll be the real interesting thing this year with Tanner Engstring, because the Jets do have one of the youngest offensive lines that are really good, right? When you talk about adding Armand Membu, and the average age of a starter on their offensive line is only 24. Like, I don't know if there's a team in the NFL that can say that right now. The oldest person is John Simpson at 27. Like, they have a very young, gifted offensive line. So it'll be interesting with Tanner Engstring coming over from the Lions, and they like to establish the run. Can they finally unleash Breece Hall and get him going with Braylon Allen as well in the backfield? Because what they were asked to do schematically last year made absolutely no sense when you watch it on tape.
And they were headed.
There's also talk they may move Breece Hall. I mean, they have so many backs there now. The Jets do have a lot of depth.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, Austin Davis, like that. They have some really good backs. But I don't think you can move Breece Hall. I understand why you would maybe want to do it because he's in a contract year. But Breece is one of the best complete backs in this league. They just got to figure out a way to get him the ball more effectively.
Yeah. Oh, if he's got 4.3 speed, he's really, really special. I don't know. There's one football question I wanted to ask you, because there's a great article in one of the annuals about pre-snap motion. And it basically, without getting too deep into it, it just basically talks about the evolution of all the different schematic adapt. The offense breaks down, has one shift, and the defense is another shift, and it's the zone blitz, it's the 46 defense, it's the flooding a zone, it's the West Coast offense. Well, a lot of teams are using pre-snap motion, and early on, it was about giving the quarterback a coverage indicator. If the defender went with the guy, and they're playing man. If they didn't, he passed it off. They're probably playing zone, some form of a zone, and it gave quarterbacks, a pre-snap indicator of man zone. Now, according to Farrar, he thinks that motion is being used to more define and disrupt, and offensive coordinators are targeting, that conflict defender or a particular area of coverage by introducing, a target into that area late in the pre-snap process with the shift, and then accentuating it with motion. And if you look at the numbers from motion last year in 2024, Quarterbacks without pre-snap motion completed like 63% and had like a 90 rating. Quarterbacks with pre-snap motion completed almost 67% with a 94 rating. And then quarterbacks, when they actually hit the guy that went in motion, they had a 75% completion percentage with a 100.1 passer rating. So that was very successful. What do you think? I mean, we're seeing shifting safeties now, where defenses shifting safeties at the last time to try to create some indecision among the offense. It seems like the offense and defense are trying to do the same thing to one another. Where do you think this is going as far as pre-snap motion? Shanahan's used it a ton, but then last year out of the blue, he made a lot of changes to what he did, and we do see trends within the league. What are you seeing?
This is the evolution of football. I liken it to this. Like in the 90s and 80s, everything was run dominant, right? So linebackers were 250, 260 pounds to stop the run. And then offenses got smart and said, you know what? We're going to come out in 11 personnel, one back, one tight end, three receivers. Your big linebackers can't cover our tight end in space, right? And what happened? The defense adjusted and linebackers got smaller. Well, the last couple of years, we've seen an uptick in the run game as well because linebackers are smaller. So just comparing it to the pre-snap motion, you stated it, right? Everybody from that Shanahan tree, whether it's Mike McDaniel, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, like they're synonymous with that pre-snap motion. But the evolution of defenses, I just broke down a film the other day on Twitter. If you guys want to go to my Twitter handle and find it, on the Denver Broncos and what Vance Joseph has done a masterful job of is when teams give you that pre-snap motion to give you an indicator, he'll travel the guy with him, but then him and the other guy will switch responsibilities and they'll go zone coverage instead of going man. So what you see pre-snap compared to post-snap is different. And a lot of times you'll get double motion, right? You'll get pre-snap motion from the tight end, and then once he sets a receiver in motion, because the quarterback just wants to check to make sure it's going to be man coverage. And Vance Joseph and different defensive coordinators have done a really good job of switching things up with saying, well, we're going to travel our guy with your receiver and tight end. But what you don't know is that we're going to switch responsibilities with the guy on the opposite side of the field. And now, instead of that corner or slot corner playing man, he's playing zone and he's dropping in the middle of the field. He's dropping down the seam. And now, the quarterback is thinking he's trying to look the safety off, thinking it's man coverage to throw a corner route or a go route on the other side. And it's already predetermined. And he lets the ball go. That safety's just sitting there. You end up getting the interception. So that's the evolution. And I think that's why you maybe saw Kyle not use it as much, because there's a counter punch to everything the offense and defense does. So teams have started to catch up to that pre-snap motion and been more exotic in the way they run their defenses. That way quarterbacks don't have a beat on what they're trying to play.
Yeah. I mean, the whole game is like about forcing hesitation
for sure
on either side of the ball.
You just want somebody to think a little bit too long. That's all.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing thing. Hey, I've really enjoyed this conversation, man. Glad to have you with us. And I know we got to let you go, but you're welcome back anytime. We'd love to chop it up with you and talk ball throughout the year. What are you thinking for this 49er team before on your way out here? They were a 6-win team last year.
Yeah.
They got ridiculously high expectations. They've got the league's easiest schedule. The schedule says they should win 10 or 11 games with their eyes closed, but they're also leaning on 3/4 of a new defensive line.
Not much depth on the O-line.
And
yeah,
not
much
depth. Brock's making
depth.
$50 million. It depends on what you think of Brock too. A lot.
You got some young linebackers too.
Correct.
Trying to break in. You've got a bunch of new faces in the defensive backfield. And there's not a lot of blue chip talent out there. I said to Saleh last week, I'm like, in New York, you had dudes, man. You had Sauce and you had DJ Reed. I go, how many dudes you got here? And he's like, I don't want to say until training camp.
Well, I'll say this, Larry. To your point, the schedule makers did them a huge favor. And again,
they also did themselves a favor, dudes. They only won 6 games.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, make strength of schedule what you want it to be, because we know each year things change, right? But
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now, based off of what happened last year, they have the easiest strength of schedule when you look at the schedule that they're playing. I think they will win at least 10 games. I actually have the Cardinals winning that division this year. I just think their trajectory of where the Cardinals are going and the moves that they made this offseason. To your point, Larry, like this is Saleh's first year back. Literally only, I would say, Nick Bosa, maybe Fred Warner are the only two guys on defense that actually coached or played under him. Because I don't even think Diamador Lenore played under him. I think he was already gone by then. So, like, Saleh's first couple of years were rocky there because he had to build up the system the way he wanted it to run, and it really didn't go into effect until that third year when Chris Kaseri came. Now, that to me is a trump card. Chris Kaseri. He can kind of make some of your ailments right by the defensive line play. Now, going back to what we talked about earlier, are some of these rookies going to be able to step up to the plate and be like how Nick Bosa was his first year? I mean, that's lofty expectations, if you ask me, to ask a guy like Mykel Williams or Alfred Collins or CJ West to come in and have the impact that Bosa had his rookie year. It's kind of unheard of, right, to do what Nick Bosa did his rookie year. But that essentially, if the 49ers want to make a run, that's essentially what needs to happen for them. And then you look at the cornerback position, right? I would assume Ronaldo Green's going to be on the outside. Upton Stout, to me, loved him coming out of college, but he's a slot corner. But Diamador Lenore is one of the best slot corners in football. So are you going to force him outside, which is not out of his position, but it's not his best position? Because we saw Kansas City do that last year with Trent McDuffie, and I think it actually hurt them in the long run. Now, again, they made it to the Super Bowl, so you can say, did it really hurt them in the long run? But him not being in the slot doesn't depict his best skill set. And to me, Upton Stout can't play on the outside. He has to play in the slot. So that'll be the interesting thing. And then on offense, we talked about it, the lack of depth on offensive line. Like, obviously, Jalen Moore outpriced himself when he went to Kansas City, but they needed a guy like Jalen Moore to essentially come in and be the guy in case Trent Williams does get banged up again. I mean, yes, Trent Williams isn't human, but Father Time's undefeated. Like, at some point, he's not going to be the Trent Williams that we're accustomed to being or seeing. Right. They also lost Aaron Banks on the inside, so they have to replace the guard inside there. So, like, Dominique Pooney was a saving grace for them last year as a third-round rookie. But I have some real concerns with the depth on the offensive line. Say a Jake Brendel or a Trent Williams goes down or a Pooney goes down. Like, who's the guy that you really have faith in to come in? Because one thing we know, Larry, there's 100% injury rate in football. Somebody like your swing tackle is probably going to play at least 6 or 7 games, and I mean start, not just play. And right now, I don't have a lot of faith in their swing tackle. If I'm not mistaken, they signed DJ, right? Humphreys.
Yeah, no, they signed him, then the contract fell apart. They got Andre Dillard.
I don't understand. Dillard hasn't panned out his whole career either. So It's like, that's a concern. They're so top heavy that if somebody gets hurt, it's going to be just like it was last year. And are we sure Brandon Ayuk comes back and is the guy that he was before the injury? So, like there's a lot of concerns there. But, again, the schedule makers did them a lot of favors.
Deuce, one last quick thought. I did a video on this when I was on vacation back east. I didn't like the idea at first, but the more I think about it, the more it makes sense. What do you think of Jalen Ramsey? The Niners have the second most cap space in the league. Ramsey was drafted. His head coach was Gus Bradley. He's here. Saleh knows all about him. He wants to play for a winner. He wants to play on the West Coast. Wants to go to the Rams, but it sounds like the Rams don't want to spend the money.
No,
he's got a big contract.
Said,
you can get him. You can get him for nothing. You can get him for a 6th-round pick, but you got to pay the money.
That's the thing.
He says he can. He says he can play nickel. He says he can play safety. He's played corner. He is one of the smartest players in a while. What does Jalen Ramsey have next? Do you think Saleh will knock on Lynch and Shanahan to bring this guy in? Do you think he fits? You mentioned Demo. I agree. Demo's better in the slot. They're playing him outside. If you got Ramsey, if the Niners would you go after him? And if you did, I might play him outside and put Demo back in the slot and play Upton Stout off the bench. Give me your thoughts on Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, and this is the thing, as you get older, and think about Jalen Ramsey. I've talked to so many corners in football, and a big part of his game is his athletic ability. Like, I had corners tell me if he would lock into his technique, he probably could have been the greatest of all time. That's how good he is athletically, and that's how much of a freak of an athlete he is. But kind of how we talked about Trent Williams earlier, like Father Time is undefeated. And we saw Charles Woodson kind of prolong his career by making the switch to safety. I honestly wouldn't mind if they traded for him and put him at safety, to be honest, like a middle field safety, and just let that athletic ability go. But to your point, right, Diamond Lenore, you move him into the slot, put Ramsey on the outside. I think that would make the most sense. That way you don't depend too much on Upton Stout coming in year one and being a guy, because Ronaldo Green, actually had a pretty good rookie year, and he's kind of solidified at the other corner spot on the outside. So I would make the trade for him. Now, again, dollar cent wise, if you're San Fran, are you willing to pay that entire bill? Because Miami kind of just wants to get rid of him. And that's another thing. You talked about the culture, right? Like, you got to have a real conversation with Jalen Ramsey, because he wasn't happy in Jacksonville, forced his way out, ends up, getting traded from the LA. Now, the LA, I don't think it was a bad thing. I think it just was a money thing. I don't think it was a culture thing. But then now in Miami, kind of forcing his way out. Like, you got to have a real sit-down conversation and see what he wants, and will he be a good fit for you guys, right? Because if you plan on making a run, you got to have the culture right to do that. So Ramsey's a hell of a player. I think it makes a lot of sense. I'm actually surprised the Rams haven't done it yet, because it makes even more sense for them and their lack of corner depth. But I would not mind that at all, just because, like you talked about, San Fran has the second most cap space right now, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Brock's deal doesn't kick in until next year. Why not get it done if you actually think you got a legit shot to make a run?
We never asked you about. Oh, go ahead, Sammy.
I was only going to say, it always seems to be a war of arms with the Rams. And if this is between the Rams and the Niners, here's an opportunity to do it. And McVay already had said this would be an uphill battle. Now, he wasn't saying that from a personality standpoint, but you could tell he was sort of reading into the idea that it's probably going to cost too much, or it's just not going to be a fit with who we have. So McVay didn't exactly say, yeah, we'd love to have him back. It seems like that's not going to happen.
Also, one last thought. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you with the Jets connections. Brant Boyer. Give me your thoughts on Brant Boyer. Niners special teams have been awful. They went from they were bad. They've been bad under Richard Hightower. They were bad under Schneider, and those guys are not bad coaches. And now here comes Brant Boyer. Is Brant Boyer, what level of special teams coach is he? Will the Niners special teams improve under Brant Boyer?
I will tell you this. There's a reason why he lasted through a couple regimes with the Jets, because he's a really good special teams coach. I mean, just go look at the output of the special teams players for the New York Jets. You can talk about, Irvin Charles or Justin Hardy. These guys are always at the top, vote getters and Pro Bowls. When you talk about just pure special teamers, special team players play hard for Brant Boyer because they really love and adore him. So I thought that was a home run signing by Kyle Shanahan. Obviously, he has the ties with Robert Saleh, and that probably went a long way in him signing there. Obviously, the 49ers need to fix their kicking game first and foremost. That was one of the biggest issues for them last year. But overall, you're right. It just has not been consistent. I think Brant Boyer will get them back consistent, because he's a really good coach.
Lige, thanks for jumping on, man. We really enjoyed your perspective, and man, this is the first time I've had a chance to talk to you, but I'm very impressed. Would love to have you back. Best of luck. By the way, I was looking at your Wikipedia. Sammy, do you want to guess what Lige and I have in common?
Oh wow! Oh wow! This is
career-wise.
Okay, career-wise. Okay, well, Larry, you were a scout. I know that. Did you scout Lige at some point? I mean, that's what I'm gonna go.
No, because I scouted in the '90s. Lige's younger than that.
Okay, true.
So,
true. Okay.
But we both worked or work for Mad Dog Sports Radio.
Yep.
Yes.
So I am an athlete tonight on Mad Dog Sports Radio channel.
Well, I did. I hosted that for almost 2 years. And
okay,
now, I'm a host on a Sirius XM NFL Radio now.
Awesome. And I worked there on Mad Dog Radio, hosted Overtime, which was at the beginning of Mad Dog Radio. I did the overnight show from the West Coast, 10 p.m. Sammy to 3 a.m.
Wow.
Ooh, goodness gracious.
West Coast, 55 minutes an hour, no commercials. It was a long show. Hey, but Lige, thanks for jumping on. Awesome perspective, and thanks again. We'll let you get out of here and get on with your day, but we'd love to have you back. And Sammy, great job getting Lige, and awesome,
Look,
man.
Deuce
Really.
is a tremendous guy. 10 years in the league. He's got that proud Emmy Award behind him as well. He's at CBS Sports. You can catch him there. His Twitter account is fun to follow. He's got new projects on the horizon as well. But Deuce, and you also have a podcast going as well, don't you, Deuce? Let us know about that.
Yeah. So I was talking to my guy Sam about this the other day. I'm about to start up a new podcast called Chopping It Up with Dudes. And it's a play on words, right? Because I like to get down in the kitchen and cook. So I'm going to bring that love of cooking to some of your favorite celebrities. And we're going to sit down and talk with them about, life, whether it's their sports players' life outside of football, get into what really drives them day in and day out, but also get into the kitchen and see where their cooking skills are like too. So I'm very excited for it.
Oh, that's very cool. Guy Fieri, watch out. Watch out. Deuce is coming. Hey, man, have a great rest of your day. Thanks for jumping on.
Appreciate you guys.
Appreciate it. Oh,
Deuce
man.
is awesome.
He was fantastic. Great guy. Great get.
I was talking to him. He actually, we were talking, we were chopping it up. In fact, he and I just thought to myself, I know Larry and I have these great conversations on Mondays, but Deuce, obviously the Jets are always sort of top of mind, mostly for bad reasons, it seems recently, but I figured with the Rodgers being in the news the way that he was, and this Saleh connection, obviously for you, Larry, I just thought Deuce would have such incredible insight to these Niners now that there is that Jets pipeline with the Niners. It's right there. And Deuce is capable of, he's capable of talking about anything, clearly, but he can get in the trenches with you. I knew that you would appreciate that, and he is just a tremendous dude.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic. I mean, we'll turn that into 5 different videos that are going to be really, really good.
So glad.
I want to show you a guy that I stream with who has a Niner thought, and it's funny. It's about Sebastian Valdez, who's a defensive lineman. It's funny. This is why you really, you can't really anticipate what a team's going to be until you actually see it. Because when you put these guys in the field, odds are somebody who you think's good is not going to be good. Somebody that you don't think's any good is going to be really good. Here's Chase Sr., who does his own stream. Here he is talking about this player for the 49ers. And let's listen when we can hear this and we'll react. Here it is.
Did the San Francisco 49ers find a hidden gem in undrafted free agent defensive tackle Sebastian Valdez? Let's dive in. I'm Chase Senior, host of the 49ers Report, and if you want Niners coverage every single day year-round, be sure to give me a follow and subscribe. So following the draft, the Niners inked Valdez to a contract. He played his college football at Washington and Montana State, and keep in mind that in this Niners wide 9 scheme, sometimes it's hard to fit defensive tackles who fit the Niners scheme. It looks as though Valdez could. Really impressive all throughout the spring. He's 6'3", 301 pounds. He ran a 40-yard dash in the pre-draft process just over 5 seconds. So he has some speed and explosiveness to his game. A 3-tech with a lot of power and core strength. He packs a punch and plays a lot heavier than 301 pounds. As a defensive tackle in the wide 9, you have to be mobile. He definitely has some short area quickness and feel, and there's an opportunity because the Niners are thin at defensive tackle for him to make the team.
Yeah, I've been talking about this guy as well. A couple years ago, I was really fired up about Brock Purdy going into camp. This is a guy that I'm really fired up about going into camp, and nobody really knows anything about this kid. Sebastian Valdez, 49er.
You love finding this, Larry. You love the undrafted players. You love the day after the draft. You love the Sunday after the draft when the news trickles in about all the players that are now landing somewhere. And there are big stories like that. We just talked to a guy. Deuce was a guy who was undrafted. I mean, there are players that make a massive impact in this league that aren't even drafted whatsoever. I went back yesterday. I couldn't believe it. I was going through all the drafts before this draft to look at who the top pick in the draft was, and then where some of the other gems are. And I couldn't believe this. I was going through and I was looking at even Hall of Famers that are drafted, and I couldn't believe that I found the former tight end of the Chargers, Hall of Famer, basketball player and football player, who was undrafted. I was looking for where he was drafted, and then I realized, wait a second. Gates was undrafted.
He was undrafted. Yeah.
Right. I mean,
he was a basketball player.
He was a basketball player, but look at his size. I mean, it feels like somebody would have taken a flyer, but this is where teams can make a difference. You're not paying a guy. No one else is looking in that direction. It's not a name on everybody's radar. And then he's making an impact in camp. And unless you're there at camp, you don't know it and the other teams don't know it. And this is a guy that clearly has been identified, Larry. And on this defense with Saleh, this could make a huge difference. And one other thing I want to point out in regards to rookies and what can happen on defense, last year, two teams who obviously had special seasons, the Rams and the Eagles. Go back and look at the Defensive Rookie of the Year finalists. Both the Eagles and the Rams had 2 players nominated for Defensive Rookie of the Year. It was historic that we had 2 teams with 2 players each as Defensive Rookie of the Year as finalists for both the Eagles and the Rams. And obviously both of those defenses made an impact in 2024.
Braden Fisk, of course, and Jared Verse. Yeah, I mean, and I really think the Rams are the it's funny. Dews thinks the Cardinals, and the Cardinals definitely are getting better, and they're well coached. I think Jonathan Gannon's a really good football coach, and he's drafted a lot of defensive players. We'll see what the Cardinals can do this year. That's an interesting one. He likes the Cardinals. I kind of like the Rams.
And they signed
I like the Rams.
They signed Sweat. So the Cardinals signed Sweat away from the Eagles. And a guy that I told you is going to be a massive, massive player. I think he's going to redefine the position. I think their tight end. I think Trey McBride is a superstar. Had he been in the end zone 3 to 4 more times last season, he would be a superstar. In fantasy football, his name gets brought up a lot, but I'm talking about football. This guy's the next tight end in the league that's going to take it over is Trey McBride, without a question in my mind.
Yeah, there's no question. He's really, really good. Plus, this is year 2 for Marvin Harrison Jr., and I don't know if you've seen him, but he's jacked. He's super jacked. So I would say watch out for Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr., Michael Wilson, Zay Jones, and as you said, McBride. And you still got James Conner. You got Kyler. They've rebuilt their offensive line. I mean, Paris Johnson at left tackle is really, really good. Jonah Williams is the right tackle. I'm not sure about the rest of their line, but I love Paris Johnson at left tackle. On defense is where they added everybody. They added Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson, Walter Nolan in the draft, Cody Simon in the draft, Will Johnson from Michigan in the draft, Denzel Burke, Jordan Birch. I mean, they added a lot. The Cardinals did in the draft. So Akeem Davis Gaither, a linebacker, he's a good add. You mentioned Josh Sweat. They added quite a bit free agency-wise to their defense. So we'll see. I mean, the Cardinals are such a losing organization. I can't really, put a lot of, I got to see it. Where the Rams added, Devontae Adams, they already have Puka and Tutu Atwell. The Rams added a couple guys in the draft at receiver that people will be talking about. Kanata Mumfield and Mario Williams. Both those guys are really good, and they're both undrafted. Or Kanata Mumfield was a 7th-round pick. They also got Willie Lampkin.
Yeah, you
got Willie Lampkin as an undrafted guy,
right? You love the lineman they got from the Chargers, also, right?
Alaric Jackson. Is you talking about that? Oh no. You talking about? No, he's injured actually. Puna Ford.
Yes, Puna.
Yeah,
Ford
I'm a big
Puna
Ford.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, I love Puna. I mean, Puna's a big nose guard who just stops the inside run. So that's a great get for the Rams because they don't invest a lot at linebacker. So, the Niners do invest in linebackers. The Rams, Nate Landman and Omar Spates are there. They did draft Chris Paul Jr., but, they don't typically invest that much money in the middle of the field. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting.
Well,
I think
you and I went through the NFC West. We went through the odds and talked about who that is not a favorite in each division could actually win that division. And obviously the Niners and the Rams right now are the team that are sort of tied when it comes to odds out of Vegas. And we were talking about, maybe other teams that could steal it. And of course, that became a Cardinals conversation. But I want to bring something up about the Seahawks. To me are so interesting because of how sort of remade they are from what we thought of the year before. I mean, when your quarterback is entirely different one season to the next, it just forces the conversation for what is this going to look like now. And it's really a Sam Darnold conversation, which there's 2 parts of that because there was something that came up this week where Tom Brady had apparently said
Richard Sherman's.
Yeah.
Didn't Richard Sherman rip Darnold?
Yes. Yes, and Tom Brady
See if
also.
I can call this up. I might be able to find this actually.
This is good. And so, and while you're looking for it, Tom Brady also, apparently the conversation with the Raiders was that Brady had said, don't go after Sam Darnold. In other words, they knew that they were going to go in another direction for quarterback, and they didn't. And so, of course, Darnold and Geno are now linked forever with this conversation because Darnold ends up in Seattle and Geno ends up with the Raiders. But it really comes down to what we think of Darnold, doesn't it? I mean, Seattle, are they better with Darnold than they were with Geno? This is a team that contended. I mean, when you look at the division last season, it was down to the Seahawks and the Rams in the end. Just before the last week of the season, it looked like it was going to come down to their last game against one another, and it turned out the Rams on a tiebreak had won it the week before. But the Seahawks were there right to the end. The Seahawks, and now you're talking no DK, no Geno. Do you like Darnold in there? It's really pretty interesting to look at them. I don't know. I don't know. Seattle's really fascinating. The run game, I thought it was going to be sort of a coming out for Charbonnet, and it still could be. I still like Charbonnet. I like their 1-2 punch at running back. But is Seattle going to be there as a thorn in the side in this NFC West? It feels like it's anybody's. The Niners have the schedule. The Rams have what are coming off a season where they think they could have won the Super Bowl had they punched that last one in against the Eagles. It's really up in the air, and there's dudes throwing out the Cardinals like they could do it. I think I'm leaning. I'm leaning Niners. I'm just going to lean with the schedule and the idea that Purdy's going to now say, you know what, everyone says that I'm getting paid and now I'm a different guy. I think Purdy has had his head on straight this entire time. I see the Niners with everything to prove, and a guy we haven't even mentioned his name today, Christian McCaffrey. Talk about someone who's ready, who has seen what running backs who seemingly are past their prime can do, and what Saquon and Derrick Henry did last season. McCaffrey, I think, is ready to say, remember when I was the best running back in this league.
Well, okay, first on Darnold. I mean, Darnold, I think I've never been a Darnold guy.
How could you be? But how could you? Why? I mean, why would?
Well,
he
was
be
great at
outside of last season?
USC, except he turned the ball over a ton.
Sure, but
and I just think he turns the ball over, and so I didn't like him in that draft. You know, I really didn't. The year that he came out, I was not like us. And SC quarterbacks don't make it. Rob Johnson, Matt Barkley, you know, everybody.
Carson's the number one.
Carson Palmer, but he's not just the number one. He's the only one.
I mean, Sanchez has a moment. Clearly,
Sanchez. He's known for the butt fumble.
Yeah, true, but he's also known. I mean, when you talk about the
come on,
Jets'
that was an aberration. That was an aberration.
Okay, well, you can't have an aberration 2 years in a row, Larry. I'm sorry.
But you can't have. He had that was his entire career.
But that's not bad. That's not bad. I mean, 2 in a row, 2 runs the AFC Championship.
I mean, that's like saying that Tebow had a good career.
No, it's different. It's different. It wasn't.
He had
twice.
1 year. This
Tebow
guy
had 2. Sanchez, dude, I don't take
but
years
I mean,
away.
I know you sound like you maybe are friends with Sanchez.
No.
Okay. He's an LA guy. He's media. You're media. I don't want to. If he's your best buddy, I'm sorry, but
I'm glad he got his hair cut. Larry, did you see his hair on the? I'm glad he cut his hair. By the way, from showing up on Fox.
I don't care about his hair, but I do remember that people were like Stafford or Sanchez. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yes.
Stafford is worlds better than Sanchez.
Proven true.
Anyway. But I'm not a Sanchez guy. But I'm not an SC quarterback guy. I wasn't a Rob Johnson guy. I wasn't a Matt Barkley guy. I mean, I could go on and on.
You're not a Caleb guy. Right?
Not a Caleb guy. And I just don't believe in the USC quarterbacks. And Carson Palmer, really had a big arm and great stature, but he was really a stiff. But he had some great years in Cincinnati.
No, Carson clearly did. But for Darnold,
I don't believe in Darnold. So I'm with Brady on that one. I don't believe in Darnold. Darnold turns it over. What you don't want to do in the NFL or as a quarterback is turn it over. Turnovers will kill you. You could be good at everything else, but if you turn it over. And what did Sam Darnold do? He had a good year last year, surrounded by Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and all these badasses. And then as soon as it was like, hey, Sam, it's quarterback time, it's playoff time, he reverted back to turnover, Tommy. So that's what he is. He's a turnover machine. I'll say this. I really believe that Jalen Milroe is going to wind up being the guy there. I think Jalen Milroe is going to wind up, I think Seattle's going to, it won't be early. They'll have their whole Sam Darnold, this is your year. They'll probably even go to Drew Lock. They'll probably all play, but eventually by the end of this year, they'll be talking about Jalen Milroe is their guy. This is going to be a transition year. Oh, we made a mistake with Darnold. He looks good. He looks good. He looks bad. He looks bad. Uh-oh, now he's hurt. Now he's then. Oh, and then here comes Milroe. Oh, he's playing well. Look at him. Look at his running ability. Because Milroe's got a howitzer. Milroe's got unbelievable speed. He's got a strong body. He's a hardworking guy. He's not a natural, but it'll take him some time. But once he learns the offense, I like Milroe more than Darnold.
It could absolutely happen with Milroe. I used to think the same thing about Alabama quarterbacks, right? I mean, there used to be the same knock for USC as there was for Alabama. Obviously, right now, the Super Bowl MVP is Jalen Hurts. You know, there's certainly a different ring to Alabama quarterback now that there used to be. Especially,
Joe Namath was,
okay, yeah, but there was a run of Alabama quarterbacks where you say, okay, it's
McElroy and
of course
every other guy.
There were plenty. I mean, there were plenty that just didn't.
Mac Jones. Don't sleep on Mac Jones.
But there was a moment in time where Mac, Tua, and Jalen, who were all in the same quarterback room at Alabama, you were saying, wow, Mac was in the. They were all headed to the playoffs. Mac, Tua, and Jalen were all headed to the playoffs early in their career, and you thought this could be something. Now, of course, Tua, there's a little shine off of that, and Mac Jones is backing up in San Francisco now, so that's completely different. But Milroe is a fascinating one, and we don't know this league, if it's proven anything, it's that the quarterback position on the way into the league is always misconstrued. Look at the draft you just talked about. The Sam Darnold draft, remember, Larry, the conversation was about first of all, it was about Darnold and Rosen at one point. It was Josh Rosen and Darnold coming out of LA. Which one of them was going to be a bigger deal? Then it was, okay, Baker, Darnold, Rosen. Remember the two other guys taken in the first round of that draft? Yeah, how about Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen? I mean, that's the hilarious part of that draft. 5 guys were taken. Lamar comes in as the last pick when the Ravens traded in to get him as the last pick of the first round, and Josh Allen. But the fact that Rosen, Darnold, and Baker were really the other names in that draft that we were talking about is kind of hysterical now, although who knows? If Darnold puts another season together like he did in Minnesota, and will the offensive line protect him, Larry? Because Darnold looked so different in the last game against Detroit, and the Rams sacked him 9 times in that playoff game in the wild card round.
I'll tell you another big question for this upcoming season, as far as you mentioned Seattle. Who can build a brand new defense faster, Michael McDonald or Robert Saleh? Because, I mean, if you look at Seattle's defense on paper, it's not the worst. No. I mean, it's Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed inside. Those guys are strong. Leonard Williams is really underrated. Okay, so that's their 3-man front. And then you've got DeMarcus Lawrence, came over from Dallas. He's still a pretty good edge rusher. You got the kid from the Chargers, Uchenna Nwosu, who's really good. Boye Mafe, he's still there. Derek Hall. I mean, they got Jared Ivey as an undrafted guy. They've got some decent guys. And then Tyrese Knight, Ernest Jones inside at linebacker, and then a secondary. Julian Love is awesome. And then you got Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon, Kobe Bryant. They drafted Nick Emanwari, JT Woods. I mean, that's not bad. I mean, I'll say this, Zy Alexander. What defense do you like better right now? If I said to you, you can have the Niner defensive personnel or the Seattle defensive personnel, who's got more talent on D?
Well, okay, talent-wise, I still think upside is going to go Niners, but you're talking consistency year to year. There are less questions about what Seattle's doing defensively at the moment. Saleh's going to get the benefit of the doubt for what he did in San Francisco, but the fact that he's got to put it all together right now based on what happened last season, coming off of a different coordinator and a different system and different players, Seattle is more of a, here's what we did last year, and now let's sand the edges of it a little bit, whereas San Francisco is, can we remake what happened when Saleh was here? But it has been a while. Saleh hasn't been here in a while, and as we mentioned with Dews, the amount of new defensive linemen, etc., Niners are still more of a question mark because we haven't seen it on the field that way. I would put money on Niners, but that's on pedigree more than it is based on what I've seen on the field.
Yeah, well, the Niners have a totally remade defensive line, but I mean, if the Niners defensive front on paper, I think is better than Seattle, but I'll take Seattle's defensive backfield for sure. Julian Love, Kobe Bryant, Reek Woolen, Devin Witherspoon. I mean, Reek Woolen's a big, dominating corner. with long arms. Witherspoon's awesome. I love Witherspoon. Julian Love is simply one of the best players in the league. Every time he plays the Niners, he looks amazing. Julian Love against the Niners is like Hall of Fame. He's been so good. And then they added Nick Emanwari, who's just a gigantic, huge, fast guy. I don't know. I mean, it can't hurt to have a gigantic, huge, fast guy. We'll see how it works out.
What do you think of Kyler, by the way? I would quickly, Larry. This is interesting to me because I remember when Kyler Murray was in the MVP conversation. I remember the pass to DeAndre Hopkins against the Bills. I remember when he and Cliff Kingsbury had this team in position to win the division. Then they didn't, and the Rams got to host them in the wild card round on the Rams trip to the Super Bowl where they won it. That went through the Cardinals in the wild card round. And that was sort of the last we heard of the Cardinals being on that trajectory. And it felt like we started to say, all right, maybe Kyler is too small and maybe he's not going to be able to rely simply on speed in this league to get away. Where are you on Kyler Murray? Because the quarterback position is so interesting. Obviously, with Jalen being Super Bowl MVP, there's a little too, all right, and then Lamar and Josh Allen obviously being in the MVP conversation the way they were. There's a little to mobility meaning something all over again. But is Kyler capable of putting it all together for an entire season?
I think he is. I think he's, he's a young guy. He needs to mature a little bit, it sounds like, but this kid's been an elite athlete forever. He throws a great football. They're surrounding him with tremendous talent, and I think it's just a matter of time. I don't know if it's this year, but I like Kyler Murray, and I definitely like Kyler Murray's potential in the NFL. Now, is he a leader? How much that really comes down to how hard does he work? How hard does he work? A lot of times comes down to how much does he love football, and how competitive is he? Some people are, competitive until they get, some success or some whatever, money or whatever, and then also they're not as competitive. I don't know how he's wired, but I love, I think he's a good guy, and I know he's got the ability. So yes, he's short, but he's not small. He's strong, and he's got a really good arm. I think it's about surrounding him with big talent and just getting momentum. So yeah, I'm a believer in Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray, he's a young quarterback that I absolutely would want.
That was a special game he had. I believe it was the second game against the Niners when they came back to beat him last season. Kyler was very special. He was really every bit of the Magic Man at the end of that game.
Well, you want to see?
Yeah.
Do you want to see the play of the game in that game?
Yes,
Here's the play of the game in that
it's
game.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Here he is.
Oh,
here he goes.
It's just unbelievable.
That was Devondre Campbell that he ran by.
That was so unlikely that point in the game, wasn't it?
That's an unbelievable runner.
He absolutely can be. I mean, this is who he can be, and it's just week in and week out, not being injured. I mean, I remember 2 seasons ago, he really ended the Eagles' chances of doing anything that season as well.
I really like Kyler. Probably getting flagged for the music, but I do like that music too.
The music's epic. Come on,
that music's the best.
Every night.
I mean, I could have. My wife and I should have danced at our wedding to that music. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, it would have been amazing. That would be a great. That would be amazing if you had like the draft when they have the whatever. Yeah. If you were and the couple blah blah blah.
Yes, no, that's so good. In fact, I was at a wedding this weekend. My cousins Max and Brittany. So they got married. Max did, and they actually had the band out while the bride. Once they kissed the bride, they actually had the band playing.
The band kissed the bride?
No. So obviously he kissed the bride, and then the band played an acoustic version on the strings for "I Love L.A." for which is like the Dodgers every time the Dodgers win a game.
The Randy Newman.
So it was the Randy Newman. Yeah, but like in a string quartet. It was really, it was perfect for Dodger fans. It was perfect. Yeah.
Oh, that is perfect. I used to love that song until they played it after every win. Now it's synonymous with. Hey, by the way, what is
Caroline.
I was just in and for the Red Sox, I was just in Connecticut, and my nephew's a big Red Sox fan, and he's just like, he's like, the Red Sox are doomed, and they're getting ready to sell, and Devers, they hand away Devers for nothing. You're down in Southern Cal. What was the Dodger fan? Do the Giants even register at all anymore with the Dodger fan? Or is there so much bad blood between Dodgers Padres that outshines the Giant Dodger rivalry? Do the Dodgers even care that the Giants got Devers, or is it like we don't even notice them? They're so down there.
Here's what's interesting. So first of all, in regards to LA and the other cities in California, this has always been a thing. San Diego hates LA. San Francisco hates LA. LA sits back and doesn't really care about either, right? That's just like an overall mentality in Southern California. LA is not concerned with the other cities because they feel like, yeah, we're not the capital, Sacramento, but we are the city that matters in California. So there's that. But from a sports perspective, here's what's fascinating about last week, Larry. The Giants came in, and the Giants and Dodgers were tied for the NL West lead, right? And then in that series, it's 11-0 on Saturday night in the second game of that series. Now, granted, the Giants scored a few runs off Kike Hernandez on the mound to end that game, so it was a little more respectable, but the Dodgers were kicking the crap out of the Giants, 11-0 on that Saturday night. They ended up taking the Sunday game as well. But what happens is on Sunday, the Red Sox wake up after sweeping the Yankees. They don't have Devers anymore, and all of a sudden Devers is a Giant. It does have a resonance, but because, like you said, the Padres came in next after the Giants, it's as if it was forgotten because the Giants weren't there anymore, and all of a sudden now you've got the Padres throwing it at Shohei, and you've got the Dodgers throwing it at Manny Machado and at Fernando Tatis, and all of a sudden that becomes a completely different thing, and you got benches clearing, and there is so much bad blood. But think about this, Larry. Yes, the Dodgers right now have the greatest player in the game, hands down. There's just no argument for that, Shohei Ohtani. And Devers is not on that level. But when you look at what Devers' productivity was with the Red Sox, it's going to make a difference. I couldn't believe what the Giants were throwing out there from a lineup standpoint when I was there looking at what the Dodgers lineup is. For the Dodgers to start a game, Shohei, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, you got Muncy and Teoscar in there. The Giants lineup without Chapman and, of course, without Devers at the time, I'm just thinking, how is this even how are they even tied for the NL West lead right now? I couldn't believe it. But the Devers thing makes a huge move. That makes there is a resonance there. And, of course, with his big home run over the weekend, like this is going to make a difference. But my point to you overall is more 20,000 feet above sea level. The Dodgers, of course, won the World Series in 2020 and 2024. But when the Giants were winning 3 World Series in a decade as well, wasn't there that assumption and sort of that feeling that the Giants were the team that mattered in the NL West and not the Dodgers? I mean, there was. I'm sorry. That was a dominant run. The Giants were spectacular over that run, Larry. I mean, what Bochy did.
They won 3 World Series, but they actually were a wild card one of those years, and it wasn't like they were. It wasn't like they just womped up on the National League in the regular season. 2010, they had a big second half led by Pat Burrell, believe it or not, Cody Ross.
Yeah, they went through a tremendous Phillies team, by the way. That 2010 team, that was the team that took out, by the way. I thought it was the greatest pitching staff ever assembled. That was Halladay, Hamels, Cliff Lee. That was the fact that and
a great lineup.
Yeah, and a great lineup. Oswalt also pitched for that team as well.
Utley, Howard.
It was Utley, Howard, and Rollins. It was.
You know what it is? It was Javi Lopez out of the bullpen neutralized those lefty bats.
Oh, it was just an incredible. I think it was a 6-game series that the Giants won that. Yeah, I couldn't believe that. But
Juan Uribe with the game winner down the right field line.
Oh, devastating.
In first row. I mean, Juan Uribe was super clutch. Super clutch. That Giant team, that was a magic ride. That was a magic carpet ride. How about 2012? They sweep the Tigers, and Barry Zito beat Verlander in Game 1 with Pablo Sandoval hitting 3 home runs.
The Pablo going Reggie Jackson was unbelievable.
Reggie Jackson in Game 1 of the World Series in 2012. That was ridiculous. 4-game sweep of the Tigers, but nothing was as big as the Bumgarner Game 7. 2014, to this day, maybe the greatest World Series pitching performance of all time.
Yes.
I mean, Jack Morris also comes to mind when I think of that. But I'm sure if you're old enough, you might say Bob Gibson, but I'm only 55.
It's okay. We weren't.
So I wasn't there for Bob Gibson. But I mean, Peter Gammons would say Bob Gibson.
Yeah, he would. He would for sure.
Or Whitey Ford or something like that. Yeah. Or Sandy Koufax, maybe 65 Koufax.
Mad Bum there.
Mad Bum. 2014. Unbelievable. Most incredible thing ever.
So I think so my point simply was, Larry, now the Dodgers like to pretend that nothing else is a blip on the radar for them because they have Shohei. They're the World Series favorite. They're coming off the World Series championship, and it seems like nothing can go wrong. And of course, now the team that won the World Series has Shohei on the mound, so they're adding that in as well. But Devers makes the NL West more interesting. I'm here to say it. Whether Dodger fans want to pretend that's not a big deal, and I think you tweeted it out there. Whatever Devers wasn't from a leadership standpoint in the clubhouse in Boston, what he did at the plate with his stick is just, I'm sorry, that's going to make a difference.
I mean, don't tell me this guy's not a leader. There's different ways to lead. Different ways to lead. Don't tell me he wasn't a leader. He was a leader. He might not have been a rah-rah leader, but he was a leader. Right. The Red Sox, here's the other thing on that. There's a belief in some quarters that your respect at your job comes from what's on your check every 2 weeks, right? I don't care if they kiss my ass. I care that they cut me the biggest check. And there's a lot of people that go through life going, respect is about the size of the check and everything else is just window dressing and lip service. But when the check is going to be big no matter what, you gotta show people proper respect. And I think the Red Sox approach was like, we paid Devers a freaking mint, and now we're going to do whatever we damn well please, and he's just going to go along with it. And if he doesn't, screw him. And they brought in Bregman, and they basically treated their best guy like he wasn't their best guy, even though they were paying him like their best guy, and they just assumed he should do it. And then they didn't have that communication with him. Well, Buster Posey, traded for him, and now guess what? Now Devers is willing to play anywhere. Isn't it interesting how that works? And also Buster read the room. Buster knows the dynamic, which is, hey, look, if you're Devers, you can do that once. You can tell one team and have this bad communication, go fly a kite, but you can't tell two. So otherwise it's on you, right? If things don't work out between Devers and the Giants, Devers is the one that looks really bad because he's now not worked out in two spots. So Buster knows that. So he knew he was going to get a Devers who was going to be happy. And that's a big part of it. So it's like, don't trade for Jimmy Butler if you're the Warriors unless you're going to give him the extension because he's not happy because he didn't get the extension. So, the Warriors traded for him and then they made him happy. And the Giants traded for Devers, but now Buster's going to communicate to him, hey, this is what we need from you. And he's like, yeah, I'll do it. He's making a mint of money.
Exactly. But, okay, one thing before we go, though, Larry, we have to because it's huge news, and I have a thorn in my side about it. But Durant, now a Rocket. I just, overall, what is your first gut instinct when you see that news? It was rumored, but now it's official. Durant is a Rocket. Does that have resonance in a league where the Thunder wake up as champs today? And we saw out of so many teams in the Western Conference this year that it didn't happen the way we thought it would. What does that mean in your eyes?
It only makes sense to me if you wanted to get rid of Jalen Green anyway. If you didn't want to get rid of Jalen Green, then, and if Jalen Green's like some awesome key cog, then, but I get a feeling that they probably didn't want Jalen Green. So that's because they could have moved other guys. They had other guys. Jalen Green's pretty good. I don't like ever in any sport trading 23-year-old guys for 37-year-old guys. I don't
Doesn't
like
make
that.
sense. Doesn't make sense.
I didn't like Jordan Poole for Chris Paul.
Right.
Didn't like it.
I have two things on this with Durant. So
I don't believe in this. Everything's about this year. Damn the future. I don't believe that.
First of all, look who the champs are, right? OKC. This is the idea. I mean, this
They're
is the
young.
perfect example of a patient approach where you're building a team the quote unquote. I don't want to even say the right way, but sort of the typical way where you're drafting players, developing players. That you're I mean, look how patient they are with Chet Holmgren, et cetera. So, but with Durant, it feels to me like Durant's career now is the end of Shaq's career all of a sudden. Like, if this doesn't happen, Phoenix was a disaster. Brooklyn goes nowhere. But, I mean, think about it. Shaq actually ended his career with the Cavs, with the Celtics, with the Suns. Completely forgettable chapters of Shaq's Hall of Fame career. Are we going to see that with Kevin Durant now? Is this Houston thing going to go nowhere? The Phoenix thing, which looked amazing on paper, went absolutely nowhere. And Why the hell is Kevin Durant not a Warrior when that was going to happen at the trade deadline? I'm so upset about that, Larry. It pisses me off every time I hear that Durant could have played with Steph for one more minute. It's all I want to see. Those two together on the court was the most unstoppable force this league has seen in decades. And the idea that Durant didn't want to move his kids out of school or whatever the fuck it was, that he doesn't end up on the Warriors, I'm angry about it just on a personal level. It just hurts me that I don't get to watch it. And I'm mad that Steph and Durant both have so much basketball left in them, and they aren't going to do it together, because when they were together, nobody could touch them.
You know, it's funny. You know, some people, you know, get married and they stay married for 58 years and they that's it. Some people get married and they get married again in 5 years, and they get married again in 10 years, and they get married again in 20 years, and they get married. So some people keep changing and other people stay. What's right? Who knows? It's right. It's about happiness, right? Some people stay in one house, one city. They never leave. Other people, I've got people I know that they literally need to move markets like every 2 or 3 years to feel alive, and they're constantly moving. Kevin Durant is a nomad. He went to 3 high schools in 4 years. He's a guy that keeps moving. He's one of the greatest players of all time who, when he retires, there's not a fan base that would call him him. He's not going to be known as a Net. He's not going to be known as a Warrior. He's not going to be known as a Thunder. He's not going to be known as a Rocket.
And OKC just won a championship without him.
He's not going to be known for anything. He's just going to be known as Kevin Durant, the guy with all the money and bunch of Olympic records. He's got some Olympic records. He's a great player. He's undeniably one of the greatest players in history. But he's also kind of a nomad who doesn't have a home. And he didn't want to be here because he's petty, and he knew Steph was the face of the thing. And then the Draymond thing. I mean,
Draymond, yeah.
And Draymond called his ass out. You know, I had no problem with that. Most real Warrior fans didn't really have any problem with that, because KD was doing that. KD was checked out, and Draymond called him out on it, and the rest of those guys, including the owner, didn't have the balls to do it. So I personally love Draymond Green, because he's the only guy in the room with any balls to tell KD, hey, we know you think you're out of here and that you're bigger than us and this and that, and hey, you're not bigger than us, and we won before you and we'll win after you.
Well,
and
the Celtics championship, it does a lot to his legacy. The Celtics championship by the Warriors without him really solidified Steph as the face and the leader of all of it. And I think it does chip away. But I also thought then he would want to come back and reestablish, because when you look at those teams that won, Durant eliminated LeBron. I mean, LeBron and Durant at the height of their careers going at it, and Durant just running through them like butter is a pretty nice feather to have in your cap.
Does Houston win a title with KD? I would say no.
No. I'm sorry, no. And this year says that anything's possible, of course, with the OKC and Indy in the finals, but I don't see Houston with KD winning a championship.
How terrible was that for Halliburton? He's Achilles. Is that for sure Achilles?
It is. Today it was Shams just said it's for sure, and you could see it just reverberating off his calf in that highlight when you watch it in slow mo.
I know you could see it. What if I'd said to you next 5 years or 10 years? What team do you think wins the most titles? You have Tatum broken in Boston. You have Halliburton broken in Indy. You've got this great young team in OKC with a ton of assets. I guess we could all say OKC, but I don't know, man. They were good. I don't know that I would say that. I didn't feel like we were watching an all-time great team. I just didn't. I don't think Chet's an all-time great player. I just don't.
I think the next decade of this league is going to run. I think San Antonio. I think Wembanyama is going to be that good. I think
Fox and Wemby.
I think building around that.
Castle.
If Fox ends up being the answer, fine. But if not, finding what fits with him, the way that it didn't happen in Milwaukee, where Giannis, yes, of course they won one, but it hasn't been sustained. I think San Antonio's got the right calm culture about it. They will find out, much like they paired the Twin Towers together, right? I mean, finding that answer for Robinson and Duncan is what you can do with Wembanyama now. I see San Antonio rebounding and becoming the team of note.
That's interesting. Wemby at the top of the NBA ladder. That would be interesting.
He'll be the alien. Yes.
He's so fun to watch. He is so fun to watch.
Nothing like it.
You know, the what that guy can do at that size is just crazy. All right, that's going to do it for us. We are an hour and 33 minutes in. Thanks to let's hit our two supers here. Yes. Joseph Ernberg, 15 touchdowns, 25 picks. Season coming for Brock Purdy. Missed you, Larry. Clarence Speaks, member for 36 months. Sammy, there you go. Little Clarence Speaks in the house. I said a little, not little. A little Clarence Speaks on a Monday. All right, Sammy, what do you got cooking the rest of the day?
So it looks like we're taking Levi to San Luis Obispo for the day. We're going to hang out on the coast, kind of, not getting all the way up to you, but a little halfway point between here and the Bay Area. So we'll see what that looks like. And
a little Avila Beach, maybe.
Exactly. So we'll hit that up. You know it well, Larry. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And what about you? You came out, the East Coast. How did it treat you? To get away
it was
like
amazing.
That, beautiful in Connecticut.
It was amazing. Went spent a day in New York. Spent some time in Connecticut on the beach. I missed the heat wave, which is now hit, so that's good. It was good. It was a good family trip. Good time to see my sister's East Coast beach house. Went to Hammonasset Beach. It was wonderful. Got a chance to get in the water a little bit, and it was good. A lot of family time. Got a chance to watch Devers' first game against the Red Sox on Nesson in Boston.
That's great.
That was pretty amazing. Got a chance to go for a full day in New York. Got a horseback deal in Central Park.
Yeah,
that was pretty sweet. Motorized bikes, I should say. We didn't go horseback. There were horses in there, but we didn't do the horseback. We did the motorized bikes.
Nice.
But it was awesome. It was awesome. Great time. And really, really good time. It was fantastic to see family. And so, now we're back. I'll be on KMBR tonight at 6:00 for a little Niners Nightly. Looking forward to that. And we'll be in training camp before we know it. So, Sammy, have a great rest of your Monday. Thanks to everybody. Thanks to Mancini Sleep World. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. Thanks to Sammy. Sammy, anybody you want to shout out before we bolt for the door?
Well, we can just say at Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam. That's the page that you got here along with yours, Larry. And thanks for everybody's support there. The podcast that we do with Andrew Siciliano. But yeah, Thinking Out Loud, Siciliano and Sam, even though I spelled it wrong there in the comments, but that's all right. But also, thanks to Lige Doozable, to get Krug and Dooz together. I didn't know what was a better combo, Larry and Lige or Krug and Dooz, but they both have a nice ring to it. But I was glad to put you two
he's
together.
Money,
he's
man.
Awesome, right?
He's so good. That was a great get.
I'm so glad that came together, and he's just such a good dude, and I have known him through the years, and I just thought, you know what, let's get these two together. Let's get us all on here, and it was awesome.
Dude. I love that idea. And we'll be doing some guests on some Mondays. For those of you, if you guys have guest ideas, you can put it in the comments below. Hit the like and subscribe on your way out. Thanks to Sammy. Hit like and subscribe on his channel as well. And thanks for supporting the Krug Show. We're getting close to 60,000 subs, by the way. Let me see.
Yes.
See where we're at here.
On. Let's bring
see.
That over the finish
line. What are we at? 59,000. 463, 59,463. So we're 500 and change away. If you haven't hit subscribe, hit like and subscribe. And thanks for supporting the Krug Show. Have a great Monday, everybody. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you